Pro-Trump activists are plotting to help Trump exercise extraordinary presidential power over voting through a false declaration that China interfered with the 2020 presidential election. So if that's the case, Cenk, maybe we need to revisit all those congressional races where Republicans beat Democrats.
Yeah, that was my idea back in 2020. They said, oh, this is an illegitimate election. I said, great, then don't seat them. But the Democrats have no balls. They should have done that in the first place. You say that your election was fake? Great, I'm taking your seat away. We'll have a re-election. I didn't say it, you said it, right? So in this case, guys, this is not a left-right issue. This is the elites going, we're going to war with Iran, and 80% of Americans are against it. Time to steal the voting machines and federalize the elections. We're gonna lock this thing down. We're done with propaganda, it stopped working. We're going directly to oppression. So tell them about it, Anna.
So Trump is already reviewing his plans to mandate, voter ID and more nefariously, if you ask me, a ban on mail-in ballots for the midterm election. So clearly he knows that he's pretty unpopular right now for a number of different reasons, but that unpopularity is likely going to be an even bigger issue for him as we go to war with Iran on behalf of a foreign country. But as far as the plotting from his, pro-Trump activist goes, lawyer Peter Titkin is a Florida lawyer who's advocating for this draft executive order that Trump would sign, right? Now, he says under the Constitution, it's the legislatures and states that really control how a state conducts its elections. And the president doesn't have any power to do that. But here we have a situation where the president is aware that there are foreign interests that are interfering in our election processes. Okay, so he goes on to say, that causes a national emergency where the president has to be able to deal with it. So essentially, this is all about Trump declaring that there is some sort of a national emergency, which would help him increase his power over the election process in various states, okay? That's the thinking here. So just so you have a better sense of who this Titkin guy is, he was part of Trump's legal team, which filed an unsuccessful 2022 lawsuit accusing Democrats of conspiring to damage Trump with allegations that his 2016 campaign colluded with Russia. Now, I think Democrats were really shady for doing that because it turned out not to be true. But nonetheless, he lost that suit. He's also the lawyer for Tina Peters, who was jailed on state charges tied to the fact that she broke into a facility and into voting equipment in Colorado. She happened to be the former Colorado County clerk. She's now serving 9 years in prison for her crimes. So that's who this guy is. I wanted to give you a little bit of his background. But look, is it true? Is there any reality behind this claim that China attempted to meddle in our elections or did meddle in our elections? Obviously, the answer is no. In fact, back in 2021, intelligence review suggested that China considered efforts to influence the election, but didn't go through with it. And then last June, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley released FBI records showing an initial tip alleging that a Chinese effort was underway to produce fraudulent driver's licenses for mail-in ballots. So you know what that spurred? An investigation which was launched in 2021 by Republicans to look for bamboo fibers in Arizona ballots. Cenk, you'll be shocked to find that they came up empty in that investigation.
Yeah, no, the panda ate my vote, I know. Guys, this is a super serious issue and this is a red line. It cannot be crossed. I wanna be super clear. This is not the SAVE Act. This is not about voter ID. This is totally different.
This is an executive order where Trump would declare a national emergency so he can take over states and how they carry out their elections.
So let me quote a part of this Washington Post article and from that same Titkin guy that Anna read you about. He said they explain the emergency would empower the president to ban mail-in ballots and voting machines as the vectors of foreign interference. So what that means is the federal government could seize voting machines. The states run elections under our Constitution. And the right wing used to say that was super important that they have that. If just the president or the elites in DC can seize the voting machines, it's over. Then there is no more resistance. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Somebody at the White House will just tell you who won the election. I've seen that movie in the Middle East. I've seen that movie in a lot of places. It never ends well. It's never ended well once. That's why our Constitution is dead set against it. If he goes to seize voting machines, there's going to be pandemonium, a chaos you've not seen in America before, because no one's going to stand for that.
So the Washington Post managed to obtain, early versions of this draft executive order, and I want to actually read some of the wording to you because it's really important. So one way that Trump might try to make this happen is by citing a Biden-era executive order. And this is what we talk about when we say every action your preferred party takes, you need to consider how you would feel if the opposite party used that to their advantage, right? So an early version of the proposed draft cites a 2018 executive order that declared an emergency to impose sanctions on foreign entities targeting election infrastructure. President Joe Biden repeatedly extended that emergency, and in 2024, the Treasury Department used the order to place Iranian and Russian entities under sanctions. So that's what Biden did. And under this draft executive order, Trump would theoretically use this or cite this as justification for what he is attempting to do in taking over and controlling how states carry out their elections process, right? So the proposed draft dated in April of 2025 reads, there is now clear and compelling evidence from court cases and forensic analysis that these threats have not been mitigated, meaning the threats that were cited by Biden, but instead have intensified. This constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Jerome Corsi, who circulated this draft executive order in July, says, the stage is largely being set by the revelations coming out of foreign powers being involved in influencing the 2020 election. Again, I mean, all of this is BS, but this is what they're gonna claim to make their case.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
Corsi, by the way, helped spread the birtherism smear against Barack Obama. The 2025 draft of the proposed executive order also cites things like hand-marked and hand-counted paper ballots, which I'm gonna be fully honest, I'm totally in favor of. But to be clear, that's not the main thing that they're after here. They want to make it more difficult for people to vote by banning mail-in ballots altogether. They want to require voters to register again in order to vote in 2026. A lot of people are not gonna know they need to do that. They're not gonna end up doing that, and then they're not gonna be able to vote. That's the whole point. They want to restrict mail ballots to very limited circumstances. The draft also cites emergency authority laws like the National Emergencies Act of 1976, the Defense Production Act of 1950, and the Federal Information Security Modernization Act. Yeah. This is what they're planning. So guys, paper ballots, nothing wrong with that. We've advocated for paper ballots before. Always. But it's a combination of efficient way of doing this and making sure that there are paper ballots to validate it, right? We've been in favor of that for decades. So that's not what we're talking about. Secondly, you say, oh, well, mail-in ballots, I hear Trump thinks that they're really dangerous. Really? Because Trump mails in his vote every time. And then he takes a picture like an idiot and puts it online. I know, it's amazing. So guys, okay, there's the hypocrisy, haha. But beyond that, if Trump really thought that mail-in ballots were rigged, would he send in his own votes through the mail? Of course not. So of course he doesn't believe it, right? But so that to me is a huge, huge problem. But the voting machines is by far the biggest problem. Now, if you shoe on the other foot, like Anna said, if the Democrats came to me and said, don't worry, trust me, bro, Biden's gonna seize all the voting machines
and he's gonna tell you who won the election, I'd say, hell no. Under no goddamn circumstances, no way, no how. No, that dementia-riddled guy is gonna tell me he won the election after he seizes the voting machines. I'm not gonna destroy the country and our democracy so some stupid Democrat can win. No, I'm not gonna bow my head, okay? And no American should do that, no matter who's in charge. Finally, wait, let me get this right. They're so worried about election interference, right? Oh, what if the Russians did it? What if the Chinese did it? What if the Venezuelans did it? Is there a country that interferes with our elections more than any other country? Oh yes, there is. It's called Israel. They literally give money to 94% of Congress. They bought Kamala Harris, gave her $5 million during the election. They bought Joe Biden, gave him $11 million. They bought Donald Trump, they had to give him a lot more, $337 million. But apparently that is not interference. Buying 94% of Congress and the presidents in both parties is not interference. In fact, get a load of this great irony. They're about to start a war with Iran that they know is deeply unpopular. It's gonna go very poorly, but even if it doesn't, already 80% of Americans are against it. So what would you wanna do if you know you're going to force America to do something that 8 out of 10 Americans don't want? You'd seize the voting machines. We're talking about election interference. I would be shocked if this plan was not cooked up by some Israel first elite who said to Trump, oh yeah. No, you gotta start the war with Iran. Shut up and start the war. And then afterwards though, since no one in America wants it and it's purely for us, make sure you don't let them vote.
I mean, look, I don't know about all of that.
Yeah,
but
I'd be shocked if it wasn't an Israel first guy. Shocked. And hey,
we don't have any evidence of that. So like that speculation is fine if you want to speculate.
No, yeah, the evidence is that they control all of Washington. But I hear you on this specific issue. We don't know who wrote the memo. Anna's right. And when we find out it's an Israel first guy, I know we're all gonna be shocked, or somebody from the Heritage Foundation, etc. Right?
Yeah,
and so, but anyway, that's not the main point, guys. The main point is, if we're worried about election interference, we'd be worried about Israel. And instead, they're trying to distract you with, oh my God, what if bamboo shoots were put into the voting booths and then somehow China manipulated? But trust me, bro, I should have all the voting machines. Hell no. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.